The year is approximately 1200 BC. Agamemnon, ruler of the Mycenaean civilization along the western Aegean coastline, had brought all surrounding Greek city-states under his authority. Every neighboring kingdom acknowledged him as the supreme power of the era, and none dared oppose him. His brother Menelaus strengthened the dynasty further by marrying Helen and claiming the Spartan throne, expanding Agamemnon's reach and influence considerably. Greek civilization during this period depended almost entirely on maritime trade. The land was too rocky and infertile for large-scale agriculture, so the sea became the lifeblood of the economy. From around 1400 BC to 1250 BC, the Greeks experienced their most prosperous era, exporting olive oil and wine across the Mediterranean in their famous Mycenaean vessels. Trading partners in Cyprus, Egypt, Rhodes, and Ugarit kept Greek wealth steadily growing. This golden age relied heavily on the Hittite Empire maintaining order across Anatolia. So long as the Hittites remained dominant, eastern Mediterranean trade routes stayed open and relatively safe for Greek merchants. However, during the reign of Tudela I, the empire began fracturing. Southern principalities revolted continuously, the Kaska tribes pressured the northern borders relentlessly, and the rising Assyrian state challenged Hittite authority from the east. As Hittite control collapsed, piracy surged across Mediterranean shipping lanes. Greek merchants could no longer travel safely, and the commerce that sustained their civilization ground to a halt. The Greeks looked north toward the Black Sea as an alternative, but reaching it required crossing the Dardanelles Strait. That strait was firmly under Trojan control. For Agamemnon, the conclusion was straightforward. Troy had to be removed from the equation. King Priam of Troy understood Agamemnon's growing ambitions and sought to prevent confrontation through diplomacy. He reached an agreement with Menelaus and sent his sons Hector and Paris to Sparta as a gesture of goodwill. Menelaus hosted the Trojan princes warmly, organizing a month of celebrations at the Spartan palace. Then fate intervened. Menelaus was called away to Crete following his grandfather's death. During his absence, Paris, charming but reckless, had developed a deep obsession with Queen Helen. Taking full advantage of Menelaus's departure, he secretly placed Helen aboard a Trojan ship and sailed home with her. When Menelaus returned and discovered what had happened, his grief turned instantly to fury. He went directly to Agamemnon demanding vengeance, declaring the Trojans had dishonored all of Greece. Agamemnon, though publicly outraged, was privately delighted. He now had the perfect justification to launch the campaign he had always wanted. Agamemnon immediately summoned every kingdom that owed him loyalty, calling in their pledges and demanding soldiers and ships. The response was overwhelming. Achilles arrived leading his Myrmidon warriors, Greece's finest and most feared fighting unit. Odysseus of Ithaca brought his forces and his renowned tactical cleverness. Ajax, the mightiest Greek warrior after Achilles, also joined the coalition. A fleet of 1,000 ships eventually assembled and departed for Troy. Priam, meanwhile, recognized that returning Helen would not stop what was coming. Agamemnon's desire for the straits was the real driver of the war. Troy began preparing for a prolonged siege. Food, water, and military supplies were stockpiled in enormous quantities. Alliances across Anatolia and Thrace were activated, securing military support from dozens of allied kingdoms. Prince Hector, universally beloved and respected, was appointed commander of the city's defense. Trojan warriors defended the coastline with fiery arrows when the Greek fleet approached, managing to burn several ships before being overwhelmed by the sheer volume of incoming vessels. Unable to hold the beach against such numbers, the Trojans retreated behind their walls. The Greeks secured the coastline and swept aggressively through surrounding villages and towns, killing men, enslaving women, and systematically neutralizing Troy's regional support network. One captured woman, the noblewoman Briseis, was awarded to Achilles as a prize. Agamemnon then took her from him in a deliberate assertion of authority. Achilles, furious at the public humiliation, withdrew from the war entirely and pulled his Myrmidons with him. The Greeks' greatest weapon had removed itself from the battlefield. Troy's walls proved impenetrable to Greek siege equipment, too thick to breach, too tall to scale. Agamemnon settled into a blockade strategy, sealing every entrance and exit to the city and waiting for starvation to accomplish what his army could not. After a prolonged stalemate, the Trojans proposed a solution through their war council. Hector argued that Paris had caused the war and should take responsibility for ending it. Paris and Menelaus would fight a formal one-on-one duel, with Helen as the prize and peace as the outcome. Both sides accepted the terms. The armies lined up before Troy's walls as the two men stepped forward. Menelaus dominated the fight quickly, driving Paris to the ground with a wound to the leg. Just as Menelaus moved in for the kill, Paris scrambled upright and fled back into the Trojan ranks. The duel ended in disgrace. Agamemnon immediately ordered a full assault. The armies clashed on the open plain, but Greek soldiers fell rapidly under heavy Trojan archery fire, losing their formation and cohesion. Agamemnon ordered a retreat. Troy had won the first engagement. The soldiers in the Greek camp blamed the defeat squarely on Achilles' absence, but every attempt to persuade him to return failed. The Trojans launched a bold nighttime raid on the Greek coastal camp, burning several ships and sending the Greeks into panicked retreat. At the worst moment, Myrmidon war trumpets sounded. A warrior in Achilles' distinctive black armor charged into the Trojans at the head of the Myrmidon regiment, rallying the entire Greek force. In the subsequent fighting, Hector challenged this warrior to single combat and killed him, only for the Greek side to discover the fallen man was not Achilles at all, but Patroclus, Achilles' beloved cousin, wearing the great warrior's armor. When the news reached Achilles, it shattered him. Grief and rage swept away every trace of wounded pride instantly. He armed himself, rode to Troy's walls, and issued a personal challenge to Hector. Despite knowing what awaited him, Hector accepted. He could not betray the trust of the city that believed in him. All of Troy watched from the battlements as their champion faced the West's greatest warrior on the open plain. Achilles won. He then tied Hector's body to his horse and dragged it back to the Greek camp, a deliberate act of desecration designed to break Trojan morale entirely. Trojan allies arrived with fresh reinforcements following Hector's death, while a plague epidemic spread through the Greek camp, weakening the besieging army and deepening its demoralization. The war's momentum had shifted back toward Troy, despite everything. Agamemnon faced potential catastrophe if the Trojans launched a coordinated assault on his vulnerable coastal position. Odysseus devised a plan that was as simple as it was audacious. He knew the horse was a sacred animal to the Trojans, a symbol of divine protection. The Greeks constructed a massive hollow wooden horse, concealed their best warriors inside it, then sailed away out of sight behind the island of Tenedos. When the Trojans emerged the next morning and found the camp abandoned and the great horse standing alone on the beach, they interpreted it as a divine gift. Despite some objections, the council voted to bring it inside the city. Troy celebrated through the night, drinking freely in joyful relief. By the time the city fell into exhausted sleep, the Greeks hidden inside were quietly preparing to move. In the darkest hours of night, the Greeks inside the horse slipped out, killed the sleeping guards, and threw open the city gates. The fleet returned immediately from Tenedos. Greek soldiers poured through the open gates and fanned out across Troy, showing no mercy to anyone. Agamemnon ordered the city burned. King Priam and his family were massacred. Hector's infant son was thrown from the castle walls. Paris managed to shoot Achilles with an arrow before dying himself, ending the legend of the supposedly immortal warrior. Menelaus recovered Helen and returned to Sparta. Agamemnon sailed home victorious, only to be murdered by his wife, who had taken a lover during his long absence. Very few Trojans survived the destruction. Among them was the prince Aeneas, who led a small group of survivors westward. They eventually settled along the Italian coastline, merged with other migrating groups, and formed the people known as the Etruscans, who would later lay the foundations of the Roman Empire. Troy had fallen, but its legacy, carried in the blood of its survivors, would echo through history for centuries to come.